And so the Prophet Muhammad SAW, he's speaking with his companions, and he comes to the decision that before they try to go into Mecca, is that he wants to give them a heads up. He wants to let them know what they're here for, that they're not here for any type of confrontation, that they're only there to do commemoration of the Kaaba and to do the rites of the Umrah. And so, as he's considering who would be the best person to send for this particular assignment, so to speak, he initially had turned to Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu. Now the thing is that some people might kind of look at this like, Umar, of all the people, he want to send Umar, because of of some of the things that some of us may know about Umar. But the reason why the Prophet Muhammad had considered Umar is that before Umar had entered into Islam, one of his jobs, or one of the things that he actually would do, was that he would act as an ambassador for the Quraysh. So he had experience with this aspect of going and delivering a message to different delegations and the like. So it was a situation of prior experience that Umar had in the Jahiliyyah that could be used now in Islam. However, Umar, he had said to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu like, Ya Rasulullah, I don't think it'll be good if I go. And part of the reason why Umar has said this is because, as I've already been mentioning, is that Umar, his very presence was like aggressive. Like, if you've seen Umar, like, you're grabbing for your sword, like right off the bat. Like, if you see Umar, your heartbeat starts to go up. So it's like just the mere presence of Umar is intimidating. And so it's like the Quraysh are already going to be on guard because of the Muslims coming to their lands. If you send Umar, it's just like it's gonna like go even further. But also, Umar was also because Umar mentioned, because Umar was going to give another suggestion in regards to who should go. But Umar, his clan, because again, he was in a situation where as we said before, is that Quraysh was the greater tribe that was in control of Mecca. But that tribe was consistent of different clans. So you had the Bani Hashim, the Bani Makhzum, so on and so forth. His clan was a very small clan, and they were not in any type of position of leadership or authority. So they, the members of his clan, they didn't have any type of real authority within Quraysh. So they were, they of course were a part of the Quraysh tribe, so they had an aspect of nobility from that perspective, but they were not in a position of authority at that particular point in time. And so Umar had suggested, Ya Rasulullah, why don't you send Uthman? And the reason why Umar is suggesting Uthman is, for one, is because, as we have said about Umar, of like, his very presence, like, made you sweat. Uthman had kind of like the complete opposite persona. Is that when people were around Uthman, he did not exuberate that type of response from people. Uthman, like if you were to interact with Uthman, you would actually, become a lot more calm. Like, Uthman was a person who, if you're in his presence, you're going to feel very calm, very, very safe. You're not going to really, Uthman is not going to strike fear in your heart, with his presence. Like, your guard is going to be like completely down, with Uthman. And so, and this is in no way is to say anything negative about Uthman, because Uthman, was definitely a person of great courageousness and valor. But it's just, different people have different overarching personalities. Is that, Uthman's overarching personality is one of calmness and peace and serenity, whereas with Umar, it was like the opposite. Umar, he just exuberated strength and I don't want to say harshness, but like, I guess you could say toughness. And so it's just, we all have different personalities that we exuberate. And so, but also, it wasn't just his demeanor, but also at the same time, Uthman was an individual who his clan actually was in a position of authority. So Abu Sufyan was from the same clan as Uthman. And this was the subhanAllah. You had the Abbasids, and then you had the. Of course, as soon as I need to think of it, it just is no longer at the top of my. You had the Abbasids, and you had the.
Is it the Umayyads?
Thank you. And the Umayyads. So he was from the Umayyad clan. Thank you. I should remember that because those are the two dynasties that eventually take over the Khilafah. But in any case, so the Abbasids, of course, was from the lineage of the Prophet's uncle Abbas, and then Umayyads. This is the clan of Abu Sufyan and his son, Abu Sufyan and his son Muawiyah, which goes into his son Abu Yazid, and so on and so forth. But in any case, so Abu Sufyan is a relative of Uthman, and Abu Sufyan is the one who is like the unofficial leader of Quraysh at this point. Abu Sufyan is the unofficial leader of Quraysh, and they are from the same clan, and he is from the same clan as Uthman. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he ultimately agrees with this suggestion of Umar. And so the consensus is that Uthman will be the one that would go to Quraysh to deliver the message that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as well as his companions, had come to Mecca in order to do rites of the Kaaba and to fulfill the other requirements for the Umrah. And so what happened is that when Uthman had gone into the city of Mecca, the reaction that was expected is ultimately what occurred. Is that the Meccans, when they seen Uthman, they were not defensive, with Uthman, and because Uthman, again, he was from the Umayyad clan, who were more or less in charge, they were a means of protection for Uthman while he was there. However, word was sent, or word was allowed to be spread, that Uthman had been killed. That someone within Quraysh had decided to tell, to spread a lie that Uthman was killed. And so this word was able to reach to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and this is when you have the first bay'ah, the first pledge of allegiance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran. And this is a pledge that the Prophet ﷺ had taken with the Sahaba. Now remember that we said that the Sahaba, when they came out solely for the sake of Umrah. They came solely out for making the rites of Umrah, and so they did not come out with any type of battle-ready materials. And so they were not in a position to be able to fight. But when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had heard about this claim of Uthman being killed, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that if they have killed Uthman, I will wreak havoc upon them. And so this was to show how much Uthman meant to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, that even in this dire situation where the Sahaba were not prepared whatsoever to fight basically any army, let alone a whole city, while they were completely unprepared for that type of engagement, that the Prophet ﷺ, he will say that if they have killed Uthman, I will wreak havoc upon them. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he went underneath the tree that was there at Hudaybiyah, and he informed the Sahaba to take a bay'ah with him. So the aspect of the bay'ah, that is a pledge of allegiance that a person gives to another person in regards to whatever conditions that the pledge is going to be over. And so from the Islamic standpoint, the primary bay'ah that is recognized is the bay'ah that one would give to the Khalifa. So that's when there is a true Islamic governance and you're going to have one central figure acting as the Khalifa, acting as the vicegerent of the Muslim community, and sometimes we just refer to it as Amir Mu'mineen, the commander of the believers, is that the people will give a bay'ah to that individual, meaning that they will make a pledge of allegiance to that individual, that essentially that they will follow the leadership of that individual. And so, but in this particular case, the Sahaba were giving a bay'ah to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in that they were going to follow him, even if it meant that they were going to go to war with Quraysh over the killing of Uthman. Now again, this was a lie. This was not true, but this word was spread back to the Muslim camp. And so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had taken this bay'ah, and again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions this this bay'ah that was taken in the Quran itself, and this is, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala famously says, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions about him being pleased about that bay'ah that the Sahaba had taken, and that his hand was above their hands. And so it's mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ had said that after all the people had placed their hands on his, is that that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had placed his hand on the top of them and had said that this is for Uthman.